Have you ever noticed your dog lying right on your chest, even when it's clearly not the most comfortable spot? Not next to you, not somewhere nearby, but directly on top of you. Most people assume it's just because it's warm, and yeah, that sounds reasonable. But the real reason isn't about comfort the way you might think. And there's a small detail here that most people completely miss. And this doesn't happen as randomly as it seems. It tends to show up at very specific moments, when you're relaxed or just starting to lie down. But what's interesting is, there are times when your dog still chooses to stay right there, even when it could easily move away. Nothing is holding it there, nothing is forcing it to stay, but it stays anyway. And that's exactly what makes this behavior so unusual. Because if this were just about finding a place to rest, it wouldn't need to be this specific. But here, it's not just lying down, it's choosing that position. And that choice isn't random. It repeats it over and over again. It's not just about lying close to you. Your dog often chooses to press right against your chest, sometimes even placing its full weight on you. And sometimes, it stays there for quite a while, almost completely still. Even when you take a deeper breath or shift your position just slightly, it doesn't move away. And if you really pay attention, you'll notice something subtle. It doesn't leave. It only makes tiny adjustments, just enough to maintain that contact. This usually happens when you're barely moving or when you're in a very relaxed state. But what's strange is, it doesn't do this with everyone, and it doesn't choose this position all the time. And that is what makes it interesting. Because if this were just a habit, it would do this all the time. But it doesn't. And if you slow things down, there's something most people never notice. When your dog lies on your chest, it doesn't fully relax right away. It's almost like a part of it is still waiting to see what happens next. A small part of it is still reacting. Not because it's uncomfortable, but because it's still sensing. Every tiny movement, every subtle shift in your body. And only after a short moment, when everything remains steady, that's when it truly relaxes. Like there's a moment where it decides that everything is okay. And that moment is what makes this behavior so different. If it were simply looking for a comfortable spot, it could have chosen somewhere easier instead of lying right on top of you. But it doesn't. It still chooses that position, even when it's clearly not the most comfortable one. And more than that, when you move, it adjusts with you, like it's trying to keep that connection from breaking. It's not holding a position, it's holding a feeling. The feeling of still being in contact with you. Most people assume the reason is simple: warmth. And to be fair, that's not wrong. Others think it's just a habit, or simply that your dog likes being close to you. And on the surface, all of those explanations seem reasonable. But there's one small detail that makes all of them incomplete. But if all of that were true, it wouldn't need to choose that exact position. It could lie next to you, or somewhere else more comfortable. But it doesn't. Sometimes, it even ignores better spots, just to return to that exact place. And that's when things stop making sense. That's when you start to realize you've been missing something. Because at this point, this isn't just a reflex anymore. It's a choice. A very specific choice. And this is the part most people never notice. This behavior has a lot more to do with a sense of safety than you might think. Your chest is the closest place to your heartbeat and your breathing. But for a dog, that's not just sound.
Those are signals that everything is okay. A steady heartbeat, a consistent breath. These are things it can feel without needing to look, without needing to think. But still, always aware of it, even when it's almost asleep. And when it lies there, it's not just resting, it's checking. Not because something is wrong, but because it needs to make sure everything is still the same. Not consciously, just through feeling. Just enough to notice if something changes. Like a natural reflex, that you're still there, that everything is safe. And that's why it doesn't choose this spot because it's more comfortable. but because this is where it feels the most secure. And this becomes even clearer if you've ever noticed this. Your dog doesn't just lie still. Sometimes it makes small adjustments, moves a little closer, or shifts slightly just to maintain contact. Not because it's uncomfortable, but almost like it's rechecking that feeling, making sure that connection is still there, even when you don't notice it at all. And this happens even when you're barely moving, which shows something important. This goes beyond a sleeping position. It's a state that it actively maintains. But this still isn't the full story. Because when you look closer, this behavior doesn't only happen when your dog wants to sleep. It shows up at very specific moments, when it's not fully at ease, or when something changes, even slightly. And in those moments, it's not fully resting. It's more like it pauses while still listening. A part of it is still tuned in, still tracking what's happening around it. Maybe the environment shifts, maybe there's a new sound, or maybe you just move a little differently. Small things, but enough for it to notice. And that's why, in those moments, it doesn't just lie near you, it chooses a position where it can feel you the most clearly. And at that point, this isn't just a reflex anymore. It's how it self-regulates, by sensing that you're okay. And if you pay even closer attention, there are times when it doesn't fully lie down right away. It only places part of its body on you, like it hasn't fully decided yet that everything is safe. Like it's keeping just a little distance without fully pulling away. And only when it feels completely at ease, that's when it settles down fully. And if you think about it, you'll start to notice this isn't the only behavior like this. Your dog might follow you from room to room, lie close to you when you sit down, or simply stay in the same space as you. And none of that is random. It's how it responds to the person it feels most connected to. And in this case, that person is you. And over time, that feeling doesn't just come from the environment anymore. It becomes attached directly to you. And that's when you start to realize you're not just the one who feeds it or takes care of it every day. You are the place where it feels safe, stable, familiar. And if you watch this over a longer period of time, you'll start to notice something even clearer. This isn't something that happens once. It repeats. Not randomly, but in a very consistent way. At first, you might not notice it, but over time, you'll see your dog return to that exact position at very similar moments. When you lie down, when everything around you becomes quiet, or even when nothing obvious is happening, and it still chooses to be right there. And that repetition is what matters, because random behavior doesn't repeat like this, but behavior tied to a feeling does. And over time, that spot is no longer just a place it chooses to lie. It becomes familiar, a position it returns to without thinking. Not because it's the most comfortable, but because it's where the feeling it's looking for always shows up. And once a dog associates a feeling like that with a specific place, it doesn't easily change. Even when you don't notice it, the behavior keeps repeating, quietly, but consistently. So the next time you see your dog lying on your chest, you'll start to see it differently, not just as a small habit, but as a way for it to know that everything is okay. Not through thinking, but through feeling. Because to your dog, you're not just the one who takes care of it. You are the place where it feels safe. But your dog doesn't always choose this position. There are times when it doesn't lie on your chest. Instead, it moves behind you, presses against your back. And in that position, the meaning is completely different. It's no longer just about feeling safe. It's doing something else, something you may have never noticed. But once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it.